Chapter 6 of The Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Grey. Chapter 6 First Innings. When Chase left the grounds his eyesight was still as blurred as it had been during the game, only now from a different source. His misery fell from him like a discarded cloak. He kept his hand deep in his right trouser pocket, clutching the $25 as if it were the only solid substance to give actuality to his dream of bliss. First he thought he would send all the money to his mother. Then he reflected that as he resembled the most ragged species of tramp, he must spend something for at least respectable clothing. He entered a second-hand store, where he purchased for the sum of $5 a complete outfit, even down to the shoes and hat. It was not much on style, Chase thought, but clean and without a rip or hole. With this precious bundle under his arm, he set out to find the address given him by Mac, where he could obtain board and lodging at a reasonable rate. After some inquiry he found the street and eventually the house, which, because of a much more pretentious appearance than he had supposed it would have, made him hesitate. But following a blindly grateful resolve to do anything and everything that Mac told him, he knocked on the door. It opened at once to show a matron of kindly aspect, who started somewhat as she saw him. Chase said he had been sent there by Mac, and told his errand, whereupon the woman looked relieved. "Excuse me," she replied. "Come right in. I have one rooms, a pretty nice one, $4 a week." She showed Chase a large room with four windows, a big white bed, a table and bureau, and chairs and a lounge, and with some difficulty managed to convey to him that he might have it and board for the sum of $4 weekly. When he was certain she had not made a mistake, he lost no time in paying her for a week in advance. Good fortune was still such a stranger to him that he wanted to insure himself against moments of doubt. He washed and dressed himself with pleasure that had not been his for many a day. Quite diligently he applied the comb and brush Mrs. Obenwasser had so kindly procured. His hair was long and a mass of tangles, and it was full of cinders, which reminded him grimly of his dearly earned proficiency as a night rider on fast mail trains and slow freights. "That's all over, thank heaven," breathed Chase. "I hope I can forget it." But he knew he never would. When he backed away from the mirror and surveyed his clean face and neat suit, and saw therein a new Chase, the last vanishing gleam of his doubt and unhappiness left him. The supper bell, ringing at that moment, seemed to have a music of hope, and he went downstairs hungry and happy. Several young men at the table made themselves agreeable to him, introduced themselves as clerks employed downtown, and incidentally dyed-in-the-wool baseball fans. Chase gathered that Mrs. Obenwasser was a widow of some means, and kept boarders more out of the goodness of her heart and pride in her table than from any real necessity. Chase ate like a famished wolf. Never had meat and biscuits and milk and pie been so good, and it was shame that made him finally desist, not satisfied appetite. After supper he got paper, pen, and ink from his landlady and went to his room to write home. It came to him with a sudden shock that he had never written since he left. What could they have thought? But he hastened to write, for he had good news. He told Will everything, though he skimmed over it lightly, as if his vicissitudes were but incidents in the rise of a ball player. He wrote to his mother, telling her of his good fortune, of the promise of the future, of his good health and spirits. Then he enclosed all his money, except $1 or so in silver, in the letter and sealed it. Try as hard as he might, Chase could not prevent his tears from falling on that letter, and they were sealed up with it. Then he sallied forth to look for the post office, and incidentally see something of Findlay. He was surprised to find it a larger and more prosperous place than he had supposed. Main Street was broad and had many handsome buildings. The avenues leading from it were macadamized and lined with maple trees. Chase strolled around a block and saw many fine brick residences and substantial frame houses with vine covered, roomy porches and large lawns. Back on Main Street again, he walked along without aim. There was a hotel on the next corner, and a number of young men were sitting outside with chairs tilted back against the window, and also on the edge of the sidewalk. Chase had sauntered into the ken of his fellow players. "Say, fellers, will you get on to thet? It's Chaseaway. Hello, Chase, old sport. Come and have a drink. Dude Thatches, we can see your finish. Our new shortstop is some on the dress himself. He'll show you up. Would you mind dropping your lid over that lame blinker? I don't want to have the willies tonight." Then an incident diverted their attack on Chase. Someone kicked a leg of Enoch Winter's chair, and being already tipped far back, it overbalanced and let Enoch sprawl in the gutter, whereupon the group howled with glee. "Cap'n, whasser masser?" inquired Benny, trying to help Enoch to his feet and falling over him instead. Benny was drunk. Slowly Enoch separated himself from Benny and righted his chair and seated himself. "Now ain't that funny?" he said. His slow, easy manner of speaking without a trace of resentment made Chase look at him. Enoch was captain of the team and a man long past his boyhood. Yet there remained something boyish about him. He had a round face and a round bullet head cropped close, round gray eyes, wise as an owl's, and he had a round lump on his right cheek. As this lump moved up and down, Chase presently divined that it was only a puffed out cheek over a quid of tobacco. He instinctively liked his captain, and when asked to sit down in a vacant chair near at hand he did so, with the pleasant thought that at last he was one of them. Chase sat there for over an hour, intensely interested in all of them, in what they did and said. He felt sorry for Benny, for the second baseman was much under the influence of liquor, had a haggard face and unkempt appearance. The fellow called Dude Thatcher was a tall youth, good looking, very quiet, and very well dressed. Chase saw him flick dust off his shiny shoes and more than once adjust his spotless cuffs. Meade was a typical ball player, under 20, a rugged and bronzed fellow of jovial aspect. Hicks would never see 30 again. There was gray hair over his temples. He was robust of build, and his hands resembled eagle's claws. He was a catcher, and many a jammed and broken finger had been his lot. What surprised Chase more than anything was the fact that baseball was not mentioned once by this group. They were extremely voluble, too, and talked on every subject under the sun except the one that concerned their occupation. Under every remark lay a subtle inflection of humor. Mild sarcasm and sharp retort and ready wit flashed back and forth. The left fielder of the team, Frank Havil by name, a tall, thin fellow with a pale, sanctimonious face, strolled out of the lobby and seated himself near Chase. And with his arrival came a series of most peculiar happenings to Chase. At first he thought mosquitoes or flies were bothering him. Then he imagined a wasp or hornet was butting into his ear. Next he made sure of only one thing, that something was hitting the side of his face and head. Whatever it was, he had no idea. It happened at regular intervals and began to sting more and more. He took a sidelong glance at Havil, but that young man's calm, serious face disarmed any suspicion. But when Havil got up and moved away, the strange fact that the stinging sensation ceased to come caused Chase to associate it somehow with the quiet left fielder. "Chase, did you feel anything queer when Havil was sitting alongside of you?" asked Winters. "I certainly did. What was it?" "Havil is a queer duck. He goes around with his mouth full of number 10 shot, and he works one out on the end of his tongue and flips it off his front teeth. Why, the blame fool can knock your eye out. I've seen him make old bald headed